We're going to start with Pledge of Allegiance.
Stop right up.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, yeah. So I wing it across the room.
It's okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and hi, Mike. We're just started. We just did the pledge, and now we're on to approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes from November 14th, 2018. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Tracy. Do I get a second?
I second.
Seconded by Ilda. Any comments on the minutes? Any corrections?
Mary, do you spell check it? Mary spell checks it for all of our high school renovation committee meetings. It's kind of fun.
Okay, hearing nothing, all those in favor of approving the minutes? Any opposed? An abstention? I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there. So now we're on to public comment, and we have one person signed up, Mr. Pedro Luna. Come on up here to the microphone at the table and have a seat. Good evening.
Good evening.
Do you want to identify yourself for the record, please?
Absolutely. Pedro Luna. I'm a resident of Windham, and I live on Jackson Street. I wanted to express my support of the proposed policy change on transportation, which would require an approved adult to pick up students until second grade. I currently have two daughters enrolled in school. My oldest is in first grade. I do not feel it is safe for children that young to be dropped off alone. I know that a policy change will take a lot of planning to implement, but safety should be the priority, not cost or convenience. Thank you. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in and weighing in with us, because we are going to be talking about that this evening. Thanks. There's nobody else signed up to speak during public comment. So we will go to the superintendent's report and hand it over to you, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to everyone. We have several recognition today. I'm not going to be able to go over all of them, but just want to point out to you that the district has been, and the schools and teachers and administrators working very diligently and have received some recognition. I really want to acknowledge the members of the art department who coordinated the empty bowls for the fundraiser, and I think it was very successful for the Government Soup Kitchen. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Appreciate it. I believe they collected over $1,000, and so what a great act on behalf of our students to help others in need. The same token, we have Mr. Barbosa, that he was the athlete of the year, broke the school all-time rush record in football, and has been recognized in the newspaper locally and also in Hartford. I don't know if you've been able to take a look at the newspaper, the Chronicle. Once a month, I believe it's the first Wednesday of every month, the high school has a page in the newspaper, and it's totally developed by students and prepared by students. And we're very proud of what they're presenting. Margaret has been instrumental with Dara Bowling and the students, but this is all student work, and we are very, very pleased and honored with that work. Congratulations to all elementary school, also Natchog, near Windham, Windham Center, all had ceremony recognizing our veterans, and we want to acknowledge that also. We want to also recognize all the members of our staff, teachers, administrators, who are contributing to the United Way campaign. The United Way is an organization that support the Windham community and also support our schools. And Margaret and Laura has been instrumental in kicking on the campaign here. And we have a goal, I think, in the district to reach that goal. I also want to recognize 2 teachers from Barrows, Carolina Mendez and also Nicole Bay, who also were invited to present at the Connecticut Science Teacher Association annual conference, and that's a great, great honor for the district and honor for the teachers. So just want to recognize it. There's some other acknowledgement there, but you have that opportunity to read them. Just a reminder that our Excellence Award will take place, Award of Excellence will take place on January 24th. Usually we had it before in December, but because of so many things taking place in December, we decided to move it to January. So please mark your calendar. You will receive an invitation, and this is an opportunity where we recognize staff, students, members of the community that have served our community and served our schools. I want to thank all the members of the board that attended our State of the School. It was a tremendous success. I also want to thank Janet, Omaida, Laura, and Margaret that worked very hard to make it possible, and Barrows for hosting it at Barrows School. This is the 3rd year that we engage in the State of the School, and we want to thank all the officials that came to the State of the School. But we have a link, I believe it's on the web page, Margaret, is on the web. So if you did not attend, you also could see what took place.
And read the report.
And read the report,
yeah.
Right. Just a little bit of information. The Three Kings Day has been resuscitated in Windham. Last year we have a big celebration, and this year again it will take place. And so our family liaison are working diligently to prepare it in our community. So if there's anyone that is interested in participating or donating or supporting, just contact any of your home liaison in one of the schools.
It will be on Saturday, the 5th of January, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Right. For your information, the Barrows lottery process will take place January the 10th through February the 22nd. We expect to have the lottery by March 27th. And again, EastCon will be handling the lottery process from the beginning to the end. Update on the budget. I have met with all the principals of the different schools to present their initial request for their budget. We will meet again as the principal continue to meet and have discussion with their SGC. And Monday, last Monday, right? Last Monday, the 3rd, we had a meeting at the state DS regarding the high school renovation. Great information that we received. I also had a meeting yesterday where we discussed the high school renovation. So good information about timelines, what need to be included, and I think we're very lucky to have 2 members of the board and the building committee that can bring that information back to us. But there are a couple things that the board, I think, should be aware. We're going to go back and look at the aspect to develop the aspects, and one of the questions was other things that need to be included in the specification and the application, such like the outdoor fields and auditorium and also gymnasium. The Commissioner Network, we met today with the team looking at aligning the aspects with the career pathways. We decided to take a step back to make sure we have a plan that is well aligned, and we'll be working next month an entire day with high school that work designing the plan. They have a plan that they come with, but not necessarily the plan that fit our needs. We want to have a face that call awareness where everybody's involved and know what's going to take place and how it's going to take place. So the team from the high school is working diligently with both. So these are some information. And then we have 2 items for discussion today.
Before we move on, does anybody have any questions on any of the information that was presented in the superintendent's report? Yes, Tracy?
Dr. Garcia, you just said that the turnaround committee is taking a step back to look at the ed specs.
So when I mean a step back, we're slowing the process a little bit to make sure that there is aligned with the ed spec. That what we're doing with the turnaround committee is aligned with the ed spec.
So is that going to slow down the progression of completing the ed specs for the renovation?
No, I don't think it's going to slow it down. I just think that there's a next step there that we're looking to make sure that they both are aligned. It's not going to align perfectly, but if we say we want to have a science academy, what does that mean in the ed specs and what does that mean in the turnaround plan? I think one point of clarification is a very good point that came out today was that if we're looking at a science, for example, pathway, it not necessarily need to be very specific. It can be broader, and so that actually helped the aspect.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
One more
yes,
thing.
Go right ahead.
One more thing with the EdSpec. It was very enlightening to hear from the Director of Schools Construction that the EdSpecs need to be educational EdSpec presented by the Superintendent of School, not construction EdSpec. So they're not interested, the EdSpec are educational EdSpec, not construction EdSpec. And I think they had EdSpec that were done by different people, and so they want to make sure that we are presenting educational EdSpec. And that's why they asked us to come back and look at the auditorium, the gym, and the fields, and the FME, what we need for those. Okay.
Very complicated.
Yes.
So now that we've heard the superintendent's report, we're going to move on to discussion items. And we have two for today. One is on the new name for the one-way dual language program. And then we're going to hear from Mr. Jose Camacho about the attendance, district attendance work that's going on. So, who's kicking off the one-way dual program?
So I will kick it off, and we don't have a presentation for that. I do want to say this is one of the great things in our school district and things that make you very happy. As you can see, I'm smiling as I talk about this program. First, I want to recognize Dr. Ratna Mudambi and Amy Finstein, and that work very hard with their teachers to make sure that this will take place. Our Compañeros program has a name. What is Compañeros? And everybody knows, everybody in the state of Connecticut knows about Compañeros, including state like Rhode Island and Massachusetts. As we increase the number of bilingual classes in the school district, and so now we have one-way dual at Sweeney, Natchog, and Windham Center, the teachers felt very appropriate that this program should also have a name and should have a meaning. And so with the help of Dr. Mudambi and Amy Feinstein, they worked together to solicit feedback. The teachers from the program met. I don't know the detail of how they decided what name, but finally they settled for the name Dos Rios, that means two rivers. And I think it's because it really exemplifies what the program is about. It's about two rivers, two languages, one pathway, but two languages. So, and they voted on the name, and this is the name that they want to present to the board to call their one-way bilingual program. They talk about the flow of the program, north and south, into two communities, the English language and the Spanish language, but at the end, all convert into one point. So I think that's the meaning you have for them. So I'm presenting to you the recommendation of the bilingual department that the one-way bilingual program be named or be called Dos Rios, two rivers.
Also the meaning that we have with the rivers in our community already.
Oh, we have a lot of rivers here.
So we need a motion, I guess?
If you would.
Is it under action items, or do we just take this under advisement?
We put it under discussion today. We didn't put it under action item to see if you guys want to.
So discussion. Any discussion? Anybody have any questions or points?
One
Yes.
question is, I'm sure other people would like to know, what exactly is the difference between one-way dual language and the dual language that Compañeros represents?
Sure, yeah. So the goal in both programs is the same, is to become bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural. The difference is the separation of languages. In the Compañeros program, the program is implemented with two teachers, a native speaker in English and a native speaker in Spanish. In the one-way dual, there's only one teacher doing both. So the teacher in that program has to be bilingual, but the purpose is the same. The other difference is that in the one-way bilingual, you start with a 50% in the native language, and then you increase the English language. In the Compañeros program, it's 50-50 from the beginning. 50-50 from the beginning. In the Compañeros program, you have students from both languages, Spanish and English. In the one-way bilingual, the students are from one language, from the minority language, from Spanish.
So the one-way dual program is largely for students with a Hispanic heritage
Background.
and the Hispanic language at home.
Correct, in this program, in this district.
Now that you implemented it I'm sorry, were you done?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you. Now that you finished it, implemented it this year, are you finding any challenges?
Well, one challenge is finding teachers, so we have to start recruiting early. We also start growing our own through the Relay program. That's one challenge. That's basically the number one challenge that we're finding. Number two is making sure that we have the appropriate materials. We have the art program that bring those materials to us, but that would be a number two challenge: the staffing and the materials.
Thank you.
Oh, the other question I have is, we want to expand Compañeros to basically a pre-K to 8 by the time we're done, right?
Yes.
How many grades will the one-way program? Because at some point, if students start in, say, kindergarten or preschool speaking, but I would hope before they get to 8th grade, their English fluency has picked up to the point where they basically really are bilingual.
So the program right now is as K1, 2. So next year we're moving to 3rd grade. So every year it moves a grade up.
So eventually, you'd like to make this a K-8 program?
We would like to. We would like to have more bilingual program in the district K-8. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. I guess my question is, and we'll have to find out over time how this works. But my question is, at what point are the students really bilingual to the point where it really hardly matters whether they're in Compañeros or Dos Rios?
So as I said before, the goal of the program is both bilingual, biliteracy, biculture. We expect that at the rate that the program is being implemented, that they will be bilingual by the middle school, but keep in mind that the one-way dual does increase the percentage of English over the years and reduce the percentage of Spanish over the years.
Yeah.
I don't know, something we could look at too is historically, looking at numbers and stuff like that, there's been attrition in the Compañeros program as they get to the older grades. Maybe at some point we merge them. And maybe that's something we look at when we're doing school planning and design and we're designing the schools, keeping the one-way dual language, the Dos Rios?
Dos Rios.
Dos Rios and the Compañeros in nearby space. So instead of having 2 15-kid classrooms 15-student classrooms by the time they get to 7th grade, maybe we have 2 different, 2 10s. We have 120 instead of 2 10s or something like that. It'll save on staffing, it'll save on space and stuff like that. Because we've heard historically the attrition goes up as they get older in school. They move to another district, they opt out of the program, whatever they choose to do. Maybe then we move those 2 programs together. I know they're different, but they serve a similar population.
Well, I think what is important for the district is to solidify their vision of having a dual language school in the district, right? A school, not a program. A week ago, Hartford was here, Hartford Public School, working with us and looking, because they are implementing several dual language schools. So they're coming to us. Another thing I think to take into consideration, and your idea is well taken, but Connecticut does approve the STILA biliteracy. And so it's one of the states, and it has been approved. So kids can graduate in their diploma with a STILA biliteracy. And so because of that, I think we should encourage students to continue the program. And then we should also emphasize languages, additional languages, not only Spanish at the high schools, we have French, because kids now can obtain the STILA biliteracy. This year or next year, we will have students in the high school that will be able to graduate with the STILA biliteracy.
Is there a test to take to
There's a test that they have to take, right?
Well, that would
And a
be,
score that they have to obtain.
that would be really great
Yeah.
for their marketability in the
Definitely.
job market.
Yeah.
To have that actual seal rather than to just say, I can do it, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on that? Yes, Mark?
Just for background, 'cause I guess I wasn't aware. So we're gonna be running the Compañeros, the Dos Rios, and the traditional bilingual programming?
There's no traditional bilingual here, and Amaski did away with that program when he left. So we instituted when Compañeros always remain, but your traditional bilingual program was transitional bilingual call at that time was not in place anymore. It was gone.
So it's gonna be, so we're gonna morph that into Dos Rios.
So we started our own one-way called Dos Rios.
Compañeros has always been a voluntary program where they opt into the program. Dos Rios voluntary, or are we?
Parents can opt to be in the program, opt to be out of the program. Yes, yes.
At some point, not necessarily right now, I think it would be interesting to when we, maybe when we have the conversation about the school building that's bilingual, dual language, that, to know more about the ins and outs of children who, because not everybody enters at kindergarten necessarily, I would think. What if they move into the district? And we don't need to get deep into that now, but I think it would be interesting to know how many kids move back and forth. As Tracy said, some kids move out. When my kids were in Compañeros, some kids moved out when they got up to the middle school without finishing the program. But I wonder how many kids might come in second grade, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Yes?
Yeah, the only thing that I'm wondering about is, we're starting another program, and we've got other programs going on that we're kind of moving away from. For instance, the Barrow School, we X'd off their pre-K program, which that school was designed to have. And when we were doing that, we talked about pre-K was a really important time because of absorption with the kids and all this, getting in, and we've just slashed that. And when are we planning on filling that requirement with the state that we had?
Go ahead.
I can answer, and that's a good question. It came up actually yesterday. It came up in the conversation in the state because the Barrows plan was a K through 8, pre-K, I'm sorry, pre-K through 8. So that came up. The issue that came with Barrows is that pre-K is not mandatory. And so your plan, our district plan, called for pre-K at Barrows to also be inter-district, meaning district from the other 26 towns should be able to send their kids to the pre-K program at Barrows. That has not been materialized because schools don't want to do that. They have to pay a tuition for the kids.
The other district.
The districts don't want to pay.
Exactly, for a pre-K program. So at one point, we said, well, we're going to use those rooms for, and we put some Compañeros students in there for 2 years. Well, it's only temporary because the state did not allow us to keep those students in there because it was not designed to put Compañeros program. It was designed for a pre-K STEM, so we couldn't stay in there. They gave us those 2 years till we find a location, and we had to leave. So those rooms right now, I think, as the needs of the Barrows has increased, particularly in special ed, they're using those rooms back. But you're right, those rooms are designed for pre-K. I don't know if maybe talking to the state and if the district want to use them only for in-district pre-K. Is a possibility. We'll have to discuss it. But getting the other towns to send their students for pre-K has been the issue, Mr. Dishonor, where they're not supporting that.
I just think that, we're doing a great injustice not opening that up to our pre-K and in our district. And I think even if we just opened it up to the spots that would be available, we're giving our district kids a year's jump on everybody else, and I think that it would really greatly benefit our numbers in our district if we had that.
I'm taking note of that. I'm going to follow up with that. That's a very important request. I'm taking note, and I will follow up with that. Like I said, came up in the discussion yesterday. Okay, I will take note of that.
If we did that, then the lottery for the Windham, the 2/3 of the students, the 40 students per class in Windham, would take place at pre-K.
Correct.
Exactly.
And
Correct. And
along with the Compañeros program, which is
Exactly.
already at pre-K, which would eliminate one source of confusion that we've had about that. And we'd essentially have 40 students, we'd have 2 classes of 20 instead of 3 classes of 20 at pre-K. And then the lottery for the sending districts would occur in kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Yes.
That ought to be feasible.
Yeah. So I took note of it, and I will
Okay.
follow up with it. That's a good
you.
good suggestion.
Anything else? Okay, at this point, we're going to hear about a status report on where we are on district attendance.
Yeah.
And
Mr.
Mr. Jose Camacho is here.
Yeah.
And, you're going to be like a talk show host.
I'm gonna
for us.
stand up.
Okay, great.
So,
Good e-
so before you start, one of the things we discussed with the board is that on a regular basis, we'll bring you information and data about different aspects of the district. And so tonight is to look at attendance. Why we want to bring attendance to you. Attendance is a very important aspect of our school district, but it's also one of the most challenging aspects of our school district, and I think the board is very aware of that. We have started new initiatives to encourage parents and encourage students to come to school on a regular basis. Because if you're not in school, you cannot learn. There is severe penalty for chronic absenteeism in the district, and we're in an alliance district, and it's very severe for us. But I want to share with you how the district is doing in attendance, the challenges that we have, the successes that we have. There are some schools that are very successful, and some of the strategies that we're doing. Mr. Jose Camacho is very in tune with this. He has tremendous effort. He's always working, and you will hear from him some of the things that we have put in place, like attendance team in each school and some other new initiative. But I think it's important for the board to see the challenge that we're facing and the principal are facing and the district is facing with attendance in our school.
Good evening, everybody. I am excited to present for you guys tonight, but I please implore you, this is my first time, so go easy on me. However, I am excited to talk about attendance and let you guys know what Windham is doing in regards to that. So first,
and everybody has a packet in front of them.
yes, I have shared the presentation with everybody, so everybody should have one. I have a couple of extra copies. There were some up here, so I think you guys grabbed some. So first of all, let's talk about the challenges that we faced. Scheduled half days have proven to be a challenge. Sometimes parents cannot make arrangements for pickup, drop off, and they just end up keeping their kids home or with a family member. Illness and medical conditions, obviously it's kind of beyond our control, but it is a challenge that we face on a day-to-day basis. Weather is one of our biggest challenges because it kind of correlates with transportation. Sometimes when it's really cold out or raining, students who have to walk will just not come to school. Additionally, weather plays a part in how our year gets extended. Last year, it played a big part because we had to make up 9 additional days, and we really took a beating on that last year with attendance. Transportation, as I mentioned, as far as the high school students, they have to walk a little bit further, and the middle school students, so causing them to not come to school. And then students that are frustrated with school end up staying home because they feel like no matter if they come to school, they're not going to be successful, so they end up not coming. And then one of the common ones, too, is issues with peers. Sometimes students have issues with peers, and they end up not coming to school. Windham High Schools has proven to be one of the most challenging schools when it comes to dealing with attendance. And even though they have a robust team with a very good incentive program, they still face challenges day to day. As I mentioned before, transportation being one of them, they have to be within 1.5 miles distance in order to qualify for transportation. So when the weather is cold, when it's raining outside, students that have to walk more than likely are not going to come to school. Weather during the winter months are a challenge. If it gets cold, the data shows that we really take a beating in the months of December, January, March, February, and March. They're really tough on attendance for us. Age, believe it or not, at the high school, students are at an age where they can pretty much decide whether they want to come to school or not. And even if the parent tries to force them to go to school, even if we go to the house and try to force the kid to school, sometimes it becomes very difficult to convince these kids to come into school. And then, as I mentioned before, some of the students become so far behind that they get frustrated with school and they just don't want to come to school. So this is some data that I wanted to share with you guys. So as a district right now, we're tracking at 14.43%. It is slightly higher than last year, but it's not off the pace that we normally track. And if you look at the numbers, see the month of December, January, February, March, these numbers are going to be very high, as I mentioned before, weather being the biggest challenge. I developed this chart so that you guys can see in numbers. This year we've added the Windham Steps Academy, which we didn't have last year. And I just wanted to show you guys how our attendance is looking and give you guys some numbers in comparison to if we had Steps Academy and if we didn't. So right now, as a district, we're at 14.43%. If we did not have steps, we would be a little bit better than what we were last year at 13.56. These are the numbers that all the schools are tracking through the year so far. The red being the ones that have to improve because they're over the 13% mark. Green is under 10%, and yellow is between a little over 10, and 12 and under 12%. Natchog. Natchog School is at 13.87, which is slightly higher than last year, but they are working to improve this, and they do have an attendance team that also meets weekly. North Windham School. North Windham School has had a very big jump in attendance. They started the year very rough at a 12.13, but recently they've gotten it down all the way down to 7.56, which is excellent, and it's even lower than what they were at this point last year.
Mr. Camacho,
Yes.
will we be able to sort of unpack how these successes may have happened in the, for example, in North Wyndham School?
Yes, I'll talk about that further on into my
Okay,
presentation.
great,
I'll
thank
give you some of the ways they've been tackling attendance. Wyndham Center School, they also have been working hard on attendance. They are at 15.04, which is a 0.75% less than what they were last year. Sweeney School has also been doing a wonderful job there, a 1.5 or 1.75 lower at 11.11% in comparison to 12.78 last year. Barrows normally does well all year long, but this year, for the end of November, they ended up from a 3.87 to down to a 2.99, and in comparison to last year, where they were 7.47 at the end of November, this is a very big increase, and they've been working very hard and bettering their attendance. Windham Middle School, they're facing a lot of challenges, but they are working hard on attendance. Right now, they're sitting at 14.99 in comparison to 11.4 last year. And then Windham High School usually tracks at about 27% for the month of November, and that's basically where they're at, 27.56. Even though pre-K is not it's not factored into the numbers because it's not a state mandated program, I've included it on here because I think if we tackle the problem early on, I think we can develop a culture of attendance. And if you look at their numbers, last year in November, they were at 33.78. This month in November, they're at 28.14. They've also developed an attendance team, and they've been doing a lot of home visits and mailers and calling parents and incentives for kids so that to try to better their attendance. And then STEPS is the school that we've just opened up, Windham STEPS Academy. At this point, 93% of their students are chronically absent. Yes.
Can you tell us what chronically absent is? I understand over the course of a year, it's more than 9 absences.
Chronically absent means that you've been absent 10% of your school year up to date. For example, if we've had 60 days of school up until this point, if you've been absent 6 or more times, you are considered chronically absent.
Perfect,
For the year, it would be 18 days because it's 180 days.
Thank you.
So you can be chronically absent at one point, and then it can drop off later on.
Gotcha.
If you come to school, right?
Precisely.
So, one thing is Barrows is doing remarkably well, but I believe virtually all of those students are bused, correct?
Yes.
Everybody that goes to Barrows arrives on a bus.
Yes, they are.
So if it's raining or snowing, they're on a bus.
Right,
Yes.
let's let him finish the successes, and then we'll get into the unpacking why things are working.
So we talked about the challenges, and I've showed you data and how our district is tracking. So now I want to talk about some of the success stories that we've had so far this year. Barrows, as I mentioned before, they've gotten their percentage down to 2.99%. Their team meets together weekly. They share data. They compare data from month to month and from year to year. They call parents individually. They have a team set up to do home visits. Their administration team is all part of the attendance team, and they're very involved in their attendance percentage. This year, they are going to have a special event on the day before the holiday break, which is a winter carnival. This is one of the days that we take the biggest hit on attendance throughout the year because everybody wants to be on vacation. It's a half a day, and parents feel that half a days don't necessarily count for school for some reason. So they are going to have a nice big event on this year where they're going to have physical education activities, and they will rotate during their specials classes so that it doesn't interfere with core education. North Windham School, they started at a 12.13%, got it all the way down to 7.56%. Their team also meets weekly. Their principal runs the meeting with a stern fist, and they tackle attendance on a daily basis, and they are working very hard. They also have an incentive program, which is the perfect attendance, a homeroom perfect attendance. They have certificates that they give on trimesters for students and staff. They recognize both students and staff, and they showcase students on their Facebook page. Also, they do bulk mailing during parent-teacher conferences. Wyndham's Text Academy. So I want to share this as a success because this is a new school that we put together basically in about 2 weeks. And I really didn't think we were going to see these numbers at this point, but I'm proud to say that 14 out of the 27 former past students have improved their attendance as of right now in the year. Also, one of the big stats that I want you guys to see is that 21 out of 27 former past students are on track right now to earning 5.25 credits, which is the goal that was established for the year. So I'm very happy to present that because these students have a lot of challenges. They're overaged, and sometimes no matter what you do, if they don't want to come to school, they just don't come. So what are we as a district doing for attendance? So we have a district attendance team that meets monthly. All schools are represented in this attendance team. We review data. We compare data from past months and from past years. We discuss and share successes and difficulties, and we present innovative ideas. Also, the district attendance specialist, which is me, I support the schools by attending all their attendance meetings. I support them in home visits, phone calls, and parent meetings. I monitor their attendance and share innovative ideas and strategies with them. What are the schools doing for attendance? So all schools, like I mentioned, have a school attendance team that meets weekly. They designate a team to go out and do home visits. Some of the team members do the phone calls, set up the parent meetings. Another thing that they do is all the schools have a mentoring program where every member of the attendance team is assigned 2 to 3 students to mentor throughout the year, which can include personal relationships with the family, with the students, some personal rewards for these students, and it has proven to be working. What are the new initiatives that Windham Public School has? One of them is In Class Today, which I'm going to let Dr. Garcia talk a little bit more on that. It's a mailing tier system that we have rolled out, and it's really working out fine for us. And then we will begin to collaborate with Attendance Works as of December 20th. Also, special events have proven to be a success. All schools have a special event planned for the half day coming up on the day before a holiday. I'll give you an example. On the day before Thanksgiving, Sweeney School had a pajama day, and they charged $1, which they ended up donating the proceeds of this pajama day. So we went back last year to the day before Thanksgiving. 80% of their students were present without the special event. This year with the special event, 93% of the students showed up for the special event. So we figured, let's do a district-wide, every school represent with a special event to see how that works out for us on a scheduled half day. And then these are the list of all the upcoming events. So Sweeney will have another pajama day. Barrows will have a winter carnival. Windham Center will have a pajama day and flashlight reading. Windham Early Childhood Center is going to have a holiday parranda. Windham Middle School will have Spirit Week and Dress to Impress on that Friday. So Spirit Week will go on throughout the whole week, and then we'll end it with Dress to Impress on that Friday. North Windham is going to have the Polar Express Pajama Day. Windham High School is going to have a winter festival. And Nitruck School is going to have a dress down day. And Steps will have a holiday lunch. Attendance Works. So Attendance Works, they will collaborate with us in sharing strategies for schools and how to engage students, families, how to present ideas to them, how to monitor attendance in a different way, and how to implement the 3 tiers of intervention in a low-cost but high-effective way. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Garcia, and she would like to present to you or talk to you guys about In Class Today.
And then we'll open it up to discussion and questions. Yeah, go ahead.
In Class is a strategy that we used at the end of last year, and it comes out of Harvard School of Behavior Scientists. Basically, have you taken a look at your electricity, your electric bill, that you sometimes get a little note that said you use 80% more than your neighbor, or 20% less than your neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. So in the Harvard School of Behavior Scientists, Tom Rogers is a behavior scientist, and he works with companies like UPS, Hewlett Packard, and they design this kind of impact mailing to hit the psychic of the customer. And so particularly with like electric company, you use 20% more than your neighbor. You start questioning, well, why? So I went up to him, and he's working in school like in Philadelphia and Los Angeles, and I went up to him and I said, can we do this in Windham? And he said, no, Windham is too small. But I went back up at the end of the day, and I said to him, we're small, but we have a challenge. And he said, okay, let's try this. So at the end of the year, we did it, just as a pilot. It worked for us. The parents were calling and saying, no, my daughter hasn't missed 10 days. No, my son hasn't missed. So it worked for us. Parents, like, they saw this, and it's very interesting because we sent them a letter that said, your daughter missed 10 days. They never paying attention, they throw it in the garbage. But when they got this mailing that come out of Harbor, we don't send the mailing. We don't do that. It comes from them, they come with all the little chart and all the colors. They work in their design team. So we decided we're going to use it again this year, since we got a lot of phone calls from parents last year saying, what is this? What are you telling me? That my daughter... So what we realize is that sometimes parents do not realize how many days their children have missed of school. You know, if they miss one day here and one day tomorrow, parents sometimes don't realize that they have missed, and they don't realize that they have missed more than their neighbor or more than another child in the classroom. So we want to try it again this year since it worked so well for us last year. And we're very, very excited to work with them.
So, can we open it up to discussion
Sure,
now?
sure.
Do you have any more presentation, or
No, that's it.
do you want to come up to the table so
Sure.
you're a little closer to us? Thank you for the presentation. I want to open it up for discussion. I have one first question, though. On that mailing, if it's just once a year, how does it make
No,
it?
it's more than once a year.
Okay.
We want to do
I
it.
guess I misunderstood.
Yeah,
you.
we only, because we did it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
We tried once a year for the end of the year. I think once or twice, but it would be 4 times a year.
Okay.
4 times a year.
Okay. Anybody have anything they want to bring up?
So if the Path Academy students are 87 to 93% chronically absent, can they in fact achieve they're on track to get the credits, but can they get the credits if they're chronically absent?
Yes, they can. Because it's an alternative education
yeah.
school, attendance doesn't play a factor in whether they can earn credits
Okay.
or not.
Exactly.
So that's a difference there, and I assume that none of those students are bused.
Some are. It depends
Really?
if
We
they
bus some
qualify.
of them?
Yes, if they live within a 1.5 mile radius or distance, we do
Outside of-
bus them.
Outside.
Outside of the distance, yes. It's
Okay,
the
so
same
they
the
catch
same
buses?
qualification as the high school.
Okay, that's good. But one factor that presumably causes Barrow's low numbers is the fact that everybody's bused. So weather shouldn't be a factor in their missing school, unless they have a problem standing out waiting for the bus to arrive.
Absolutely not. Weather doesn't really play a factor. In fact, sometimes we have to call early dismissals because of hot weather days, and because they have air conditioning, that doesn't affect them
They
either.
don't have early dismissal, right?
Mark.
I guess I'm concerned with the step numbers. If we have an average of 90% or 93% absent, you're telling me I have like approximately 5 students show up a day?
No, that's not necessarily the case. Remember, being chronically absent means that you've been absent 10% of the school year. But on an average daily attendance, it's about 17 to 21 students a day.
Out of the 25? Or
27.
Well, there's 27 former PATH students, but there's several other students too that are enrolled in the school.
What is the school enrollment total?
Right now we have about 30, 32, 34.
It's between 32 and 35,
34,
somewhere around there.
Yeah. Those include 27 from the previous batch, and the others are students that we moved from the high school to that
We
program.
have an average attendance of 17 to 20
Yeah.
a day.
I have a question. When you're talking about, when you gave some of the examples of the schools that are doing particularly well, you know, it's probably easier to do particularly well in an elementary school than it is in a high school. But what do you think you're saying everybody's having those weekly meetings, weekly attendance meetings, everybody is using a lot of the same, or is able to use a lot of the same intervention strategies, home visits, calls, follow-up incentives. But a couple of the schools are doing significantly better. What do you think the secret to that is?
Well, I feel age is where that plays a part. I mean, students that are 7th, 8th, and over basically make a decision whether they want to come to school or not. And even though we try to provide the support, we try to provide incentives, we try to provide resources, sometimes either we lack the support of the parent or the student just doesn't want to come to school, and the parent ends up leaving to work before the student is really even has to get up to go to work. So it's kind of out of their control too, whether the student goes to school or not. So that age has been a big factor in students attending. And once again, we go back to the transportation. The middle school's distance is a mile. So a mile on a rainy day or on a day that's 15 degrees, walking a mile is considerably far.
No, but that's a whole different topic. I was asking, you were giving examples of some of the schools like North Windham School or whatever school's doing well at bringing down their percentages. And is there anything, if everybody's trying the same type of things in the elementary school, for example, how come some are doing better than others at getting different results, better results?
I can help you with that if you don't mind.
Please.
I can help you with that. I think, for example, in North Windham, that is a school that is a success school for the elementary school. Liz Garnier, the principal, run a very tight show when it comes to attendance. I mean, she's really, it has to do a little bit.
So you think it has to do with leadership?
It has to do a little bit with leadership
and
how they follow up with it, how principals follow up with it. Liz has a meeting weekly, but she's following up by the end of the week with the progress that they make during the week. She does not wait till the following week to have our meeting. Right there on Friday, she is following up to say, okay, what did we do? And she's very diligent to making sure that those home visits are taking place. So I will say a little bit on how each principal lead the program in their building, and how much I'll leave it like that. How they lead the program in their building, and what are the expectations in their building.
Thank you for the help.
Yes, Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I appreciated your observation about the early dismissals, although my kids are all older. Years ago, there were 10% of the school calendar was early dismissals, and it was very hard. And the younger the children are, and if, especially if one's in elementary, one's in middle school, and they were having different weeks of the early dismissals, it's very hard for the parents. I know it's also hard to schedule staff development, but I do think it's, I don't know how we can look into that strategy or adjusting it so parents of younger children don't have the trouble of having to find childcare.
It's something that has come up to the table. We've examined the calendar to see how we can
Yes.
rearrange the days and maybe instead of having 2 half days for PD, maybe just having 1 full day for PD.
Yeah.
There's different options that we've presented to the table, and we're looking into it. We're seeing how we can adjust the calendar to accommodate these parents with the elimination or diminishing the half days, the scheduled half days.
Well,
Yeah.
there might be some value in digging into the data into who's actually absent. North Windham and Windham Center schools are mostly kids that are bused because there are not sidewalks out
Yes.
there, and they're mostly picked up door to door. So they're picked up in front of their own house, as opposed to the kids that go to Natchog and Sweeney, where there are sidewalks for many of them, and they're the ones that are expected to walk through the snow and the rain and whatnot, and yet many of them are bused. So one of the questions is weather and busing really what's driving the differences here, or is it something else? And you should be able to look at individual students that are chronically absent and say, is that student bused or
A walker.
or is that student bused by being picked up in front of their house, or are they being bused from a bus stop that they have to walk a mile to get to?
Yes, and like I said, transportation has been an issue. We're looking into ways of trying to accommodate people or accommodate additional students with transportations, even at least if it's just through the winter months or through the months where we take a hit on the weather. But that's just stuff that we have to go over and look and make sure that we can implement to support our students.
Okay, and if a student is chronically absent over a whole school year, what happens? They don't move on to the next year, or what?
It depends. It depends on what grade they are, and obviously in the high school, if they've been absent for all year, no, they do not move. And in some cases, in the middle school too, depending on how many times they've been absent, and if they failed 2 out of 3 core classes.
Right.
So that determines whether the middle school students moves
Okay,
on.
but chronically absent in a 180-day school year is basically 18 days.
Yes.
If you really get influenza, you could miss 10.
Yes.
Just from one bout of influenza.
Yes, and additional to that, if you have an emergency in the family, some of these families have an emergency out of town, they'll take their kids away for 3 or 4 days, and that adds to that other 10 days. So that absences can add up. Some of the things that that we look at is whether the absences are excused or unexcused, even though they all count, but they will make a determination whether to move the kid on based on why they were absent.
So what happens as a consequence is more or less case by case?
Yes.
Yeah. And they are required to come to summer school. So at the elementary level, K-3, if the student is behind, then they are required to come to summer school.
Okay.
Also, we do the best to provide them with, in-town resources as far as community agencies, and we do the best with trying to refer to DCF on some cases.
Tracy?
So, like last year, my son got a concussion, and he was chronically absent technically because he couldn't come to school because of the concussion, but his grades were good enough and he advanced. So I think that's why it needs to be on a case-by-case basis. If mom pulls out every Friday because they go to New York City for the day, that's different than, an illness or something like that, documentable. Another thing, I got a postcard yesterday or today in the mail congratulating my son in high school for having good attendance.
So
We do that, or does the Harvard company do that?
No, that's
High
strictly
school.
from the high
High
school.
school.
That's part of their incentive programs. Like I said, the high school has one of the best incentive programs in the district. Unfortunately, because of the age factor, sometimes you can give the kid the world, but if he doesn't want to come to school, they just completely refuse. But they do have, and I'm glad that you received that because they do have an incentive program. And it is my understanding that on Tuesday they went out and did 21 home visits, visiting students throughout the district.
Okay. And then one more thing that just might be more for your information for the high school. On Monday, Andrew had a fever, he stayed home, and I didn't get a call till almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon telling me that my child wasn't in school. Now, I knew where he was in bed out cold, with some NyQuil and stuff like that, but if I was a parent who wasn't aware that my child wasn't in school, by 1:30, there's nothing I can do about it. And I know that they're busy, and I know that they're doing more with less, and it's not a criticism of the building, but it might help our numbers if a parent knew, if Andrew had skipped school, and he knows better than to come home after me finding out he skipped school, but if he had skipped school, then I would know earlier in the day, track him down, find out where he is and why he's not in school, because I think that it's more the parents, it seems from what you've said, it's more the parents who go to work early in the morning or something like that and don't know where their child is, or that he hasn't got up for school or she, than it is the ones whose parents know or, don't have to go to work early in the morning. I generally leave after him. So I know that he's left in the morning for school, and I went to wake him up that morning, and he's like, I have a fever, and I touched his forehead, and I said, yep, you're not going to school. So I knew, but by 1:30, he's already out for the day. It's already an absence, and there's nothing I can do to track him down and put his butt in a classroom seat.
Well, thank you for alerting me to that. I really appreciate it. Normally, the all calls tend to go out around 10:30 to 11 o'clock in the morning. On that particular day, it's possible something might have happened. The person that usually sends the call might have been out. I'm not exactly sure why on that particular day the call went out so late, but normally, on average, usually the calls go out before 11 o'clock in the morning. It's between 9 and 10:30 in the morning, depending on the hour of entry throughout the district.
Okay. Well, I got the postcard, so he's generally in school, so I generally don't get that phone call. I just noticed when I got it, I was like, well, it's too late for me to have done it.
It must have been coincidental that on that day, either like I said, the person that sends out the call might have been out or
I
busy at the
understand.
time with other issues. But normally, they do very well in sending them out between 10:30 and 11 o'clock in the
Thank
morning.
you.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had looked at, as far as the ages go, and the middle school numbers being a little higher, did you look at Barrow's numbers and the middle school grades? Are they higher than the grammar school end of it?
I'm not understanding the question, I'm
So,
sorry.
in other words, you were saying that as they get older, the 7th, 8th grade, in the middle school, the numbers were a little higher because of that. Does that also affect Barrows, and do you see something in Barrows that once they reach that 7th, 8th grade where absenteeism starts, or is it?
For some reason, Barrows, kids go to school in Barrows. They've tracked attendance well throughout the years. I mean, even if you look back 3 years back, they've always kept that under 10% every single month of the year. And it's an amazing stat. There's something about that school, there's something about the program that entices kids to come to school. Also, like Murphy said, that everybody gets bused. So that plays a big factor. You know, sometimes if a student is in 7th or 8th grade, it's raining, they have to walk to school. Mom, I'm not going to school no matter what you say.
Well-
Where in the case where Barrows, they get the transportation and they
Yeah,
make the
but-
decision.
It's
to
also,
go
there are a
out.
bunch of parents who have voluntarily decided to send their children to that school.
Lottery.
Many of them through a lottery and out of the district, so.
In North
It's a little
Wyndham's.
different.
North Wyndham's pretty much a bust-in school as well,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and the
And the
Compañeros
Compañeros
program
is
is
a
there.
lottery.
That's another lottery
Yours is a
program.
lottery.
And the lottery too, right.
So, but for comparison purposes, if you want to be able to compare schools, I think breaking Barrows into K-5 and 6 to 8 would make it easier to compare what's happening at Barrows with what's happening at, say, North Wyndham.
Right.
Where
And
they
that's
both
why I
have,
was-
where they
that-
both have,
Transportation,
well, they both have lottery
ladder
programs too.
process, right.
And I appreciate you guys bringing up this point because, you know, I am new in this position and every opinion here counts, and I will definitely take it all into consideration and I'll do my research in regards to the points that you guys brought up.
And he will.
Any other, yes, Mark?
I'm not advocating I'm not advocating the position, but I'm asking the question. We have the carrot approach to getting them there. Are we, on the other side, looking at are we doing any court referrals for the ones who don't come, who become severely chronic?
Yes, we are. We're working with a Youth Service Bureau and referring students on, we actually refer truant students. So there's a bit of a difference. Truants means 4 unexcused absences in a month or 10 unexcused for the year, where chronic is a percentage of, 10% of the actual days of school. But we are referring students to the Youth Service Bureau.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's a lot of hard work, and I know I have a daughter who's a teacher in the early childhood program, and I know it's, you know, to have to do the visits and the calls and whatever, it's a lot of work. So I don't think any of us don't appreciate how much you and the staff are putting in to trying to make this work.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
It's a very big challenge, and I think we've highlighted in this discussion today some differences between the schools. You know, the lottery programs versus the non-lottery programs, the transportation versus the walkers, a lot of different challenges. But I have heard a number of people say that they do feel that we should maybe look more into transportation issue, especially for the kids who have to walk year-round.
I think it would impact the numbers significantly. Even if we do something that just during the tough months of the winter, we can pick up additional students or diminish that criteria of distance a little bit. Because even in the summer, even if the student qualifies for transportation and it's 70, 80 degrees out, chances are they probably will walk or ride their bicycle to school. But during the winter months, transportation could definitely be beneficial for the district.
Yes, Mike?
On that transportation piece, I just feel that a few years back when I know the last time I was on the board, they extended that transportation, and I really think, you know, we did save a little bit of money, but I think it did hurt the district, both in attendance, everything, and that's one thing I you know, personally, I'd like to see, and I'm, you know, not even affected by it. My kids get picked up at the front door. But I think the mile and a mile and a half, it's too long for these kids to be walking. And that goes along with the same tune as safety with the younger children getting off the bus. All our surrounding towns are, you know, 4th grade and under can't be dropped off. They're calling, you know, back buses in Columbia and Lebanon when a 4th grader isn't met. They're brought back and, you know, to the schools. So the Windham kids are no less important, and the Willimantic kids are no less important than the kids in Lebanon. And it's actually, in my belief, a little more dangerous for them kids to be walking in the Willimantic area than it is in in Lebanon, you know, 200 feet to their door. So I think that's a good place, and you know,
We'll be
need
talking
we
more about
really
it,
need
yeah.
to look at that.
Any final comments? I want to thank you for coming, Mr. Camacho.
I'd like to
Hope
thank
you'll
you
come
guys for
back
giving me
again.
the time. Thank you, and
Yeah,
it'll be my pleasure
great
to
job,
come back
Jose.
anytime. Thank you.
Okay. We're on to committee reports, finance and audit.
Okay, Finance and Audit Committee met this evening. We had a long agenda, but I'm not going to go over all of it.
Highlights.
But
Anything you
well, the
think
big
we should-
highlight is we took a look at open construction projects. That is, projects that have been completed physically, but the bookkeeping hasn't all been done. And the consequence of the bookkeeping not all having been done is, you recall that when we do these projects, the state pays like 80% of the project. What happens is the town actually pays to build the building, and the state reimburses the town for the expense. Well, the state doesn't pay all of the reimbursement until all of the paperwork is turned in. That is, all of the invoices, and there's an EDO 49F. I take it F stands for final, that basically closes out the project and says, all of the bills have been paid, and here's all the documentation, and then the state, all right. So there's a substantial chunk of money that the town has not yet received from the state. The Department of Administrative Services has asked us to close out those projects. There's,
By the 31st.
there's, believe it or not, the Natchog roof. The final paperwork hasn't been, it's about ready to go, but the middle school roof and microgrid, I think Mr. Johnson said the last invoice came in within a week.
Right.
So that's going to be, and then there's the wells at that we do at North Windham Center and North Windham School and Windham Center School. I don't remember exactly when we voted that those projects were physically done, but the paper, and then if the big one is the Barrows Academy, because that was the one where the state put up $40 million. So the amount of money that's there to be reimbursed is a substantial chunk of money. At any rate, we will have all of the paperwork into the state by the end of this month. I would hope before the end of the month, actually. They may have their offices open for half a day on New Year's Eve, but we really don't want to be delivering documents that late. Let's get them in before. I think we'll be able to get them in before Christmas. But that's the plan, and that's the most important thing we have to deal with because it involves a lot of the town's money. The other things that were on the budget have to do with the way the budgets are reported to the superintendent and to the board. I believe the superintendent and the director of finance will come to an agreement on a format, and then the board will get a copy of whatever is given to the superintendent every month. I have a smaller number of budget transfers, but I don't know whether we've got enough copies to give to everybody on the board. So unless there's
I don't have any copies.
unless there's more copies of this floating around, we'll put it.
We can get it sent out to us, can't we?
Yeah, and then we can approve. We can
Tonight.
approve. We can approve it
You
at
have
the
to
next.
approve it
The
tonight?
next meeting.
We can approve it
Do you
at
have
the
your
next
co- can
meeting.
you
We
make
don't. We
copies,
don't, we don't
Michelle?
have to approve
We
these.
can make some copies.
But it's not,
Oh, you wanna-
we want to add it to an action item
Well, if
tonight,
we can
you're
get
saying?
copies for everyone on the board, I would
Okay.
like to move to
Okay.
add it as an action item to.
Okay, well, we'll get the copies and we can move to add it
Okay.
on that item.
Well,
Anything else?
if we're going to get the copies, we'll vote on it later, so we
Make a
can.
motion to add to the agenda the budget transfers as item 8G.
Okay,
All right.
great.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of adding budget transfers to item 8A?
8G.
8G, I mean. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's my report.
Okay, thank you. School planning and design.
We've had a lot going on, and we had an interesting
Your
meeting
agendas
last
have
week.
been rather big, yes.
Yeah, I got busy working some other stuff going on, so we just copied one month's agenda to the next month. But we did address everything on it, so it wasn't that big a deal. The building updates where the middle school cafeteria bathrooms are completed and Silktown Roofing is looking at the small leaks at North Windham School. Either Mr. Harris or Dr. Garcia for my next meeting is going to get me the dates on the roof. Tyler Griffin of the Board of Finance comes to all the school planning and design committee meetings, and we had discussed in September, I think, that we would get a list of when all the roofs are going to need to be done, so the town has the opportunity to plan. If we do one this year and one in 3 years, or whatever the need's going to be, it'll make it easier for the Board of Finance to be able to forecast their spending. The town council approved $506,000 in money to move the finance department from Kramer and complete the building at the top of the hill, the maintenance building. That probably won't be able to happen until after March now because we can't pave in front of the maintenance building. All of the plants that make the tar are closed down for the winter. That has to keep warm and all that kind of stuff. So finance probably won't be moved until March or April when things warm up. Oil tanks are under review. Like Dr. Garcia said, I was at the DAS meeting with her last Monday about the high school renovation. Somebody threw out a question about what's going on with the oil tanks. We're looking to get, for the two Windham schools, conversions to propane, or possibly we even discuss something else because there's no natural gas lines out there and it's very expensive to put them out. So that's under review by DAS. We have filed with DEEP for an extension. I think we're good until June of this year, but I think we filed till September, so we had the summer to get it done. Microgrid, we are still working on getting it tested, but we've gotten all the paperwork in from DEEP, and we should be getting those funds if we haven't already. Sweeney HVAC, they have to file for phase 2 of the grant by June of 2019. There's $200,000 remaining in phase 1 to do heating and ventilation for the Sweeney School. One half is set up and they have to finish the other half. Where we hit a little bit of a bump in the road was planning for the master plan, as we're calling it. Bob Roach, we had talked at the board retreat that we wanted to have a revised facilities master plan by next May, maybe June. Dr. Garcia had spoke about hiring a consultant to talk about refiguring the schools, and we've got to get that moving. It's going to push back. And I said at the retreat, depends on what we get from the district, because I had put K-8, Compañeros, those were just examples of schools that we're going to look at, and we have to design to those. Dr. Garcia wants to hire a consultant to look at what our options are for different kinds of schools, community schools, K-8 schools. I mean, K-8 works well for Barrows, but will it work well for the others? Because we see the attendance is, issues in different places, and they have other issues. So I'm really encouraging Dr. Garcia to move along quickly with that if she's going to, because we need to be able to either get an RFP out for it or something and get that moving. We had discussed May, June, depending on when we get a consultant, how long they take to do their study or whatever. It could take us into next year, and I don't want this to drag out
You'll
forever.
just keep us posted.
Right,
on how
and
that's
Bob
moving
Roach
along.
gave a proposal, emailed a proposal to Dr. Garcia, he CC'd me in the email about fees to redo the facilities master plan like he did before. And he's been working with the district and the building committee, so those are issues. High school renovation, we welcomed a new member, Tyler Griffin, to our committee, and we attended the DAS meeting on Monday. Lots of things were discussed, lots of things were made clear. Dr. Garcia is on the sharp end of the stick, as Mr. Kalajian would say, about getting things in and making sure everything's filed on time. The ed specs are a concern both for the state and the building committee, which was my concern about the turnaround. And I know the turnaround is like factoring into it in a way that nobody expected when we first filed this. So that's a big issue that we're running into right now. Mr. Callahan, who's the chair of the building committee, says that the board needs to act on those ed specs as soon as physically possible, and we really, really, in my opinion, need to, Ms. Galucci, I think, agrees with me, we really, really need to get moving on getting that done because it's holding up the next phase, and as Dr. Sewell always says, time is money, and slowing this down is costing us, and that means we're going to not have things on the other end, and we don't want that to happen. Other than that, it was a really good meeting. We got a lot done. I have one more thing on my agenda. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So time really is money because interest rates are going up and building costs have been increasing at roughly 3% a year for some time. So the project of this size, a year's delay in getting the construction done could add as much as $3 million to the cost of the project, plus whatever the increase in interest is. So it's a lot. I'd also like to point out the urgency of getting the master plan updated. We have 3 elementary school buildings that haven't been renovated in a very long time. I keep losing track of whether Windham Center or Sweeney hasn't been renovated since 1964, but the other one hasn't been renovated since 1968. So we're charging past 50 years on those two, and getting close to 55 years on one of them. And then the North Windham School building hasn't been renovated since 1986. So that'll be over 40 years by the time we get Sweeney and Windham Center taken care of. And then by the time we get those done, the middle school will be over 30 years old. So the longer it takes us to get the master plan done and get started renovated, the more we're dealing with obsolete buildings. And we're already starting to experience significant difficulties with things like leaking roofs and failing boilers and other costs that come from having buildings that have gone well past their expiration date.
Duly noted. Anybody else have anything on that?
Wait.
On this?
Just a clarification on the master plan. We're looking to have a master plan done into the state of the buildings as they are now? Or are we looking at this potential K-8 design? I'm confused as to what we're, one hand, I would say, yes, let's go ahead with a review of the facilities as they are now. I'm not ready to say, yeah, let's go to a K-8 structure for the whole district. So I'm wondering what it is we're actually looking at.
Well, I was instructed by the Planning and Design Committee to look into the design of a K-8 district. And so that's the discussion I have with my staff.
So how does that factor into a 30-year-old building that I have to worry about renovating in the next couple of
Well,
years?
you either renovate it for K-5 or you renovate it for K-8. So you have to know what you're going to do with
What
the
you're gonna
building
do
when
with
you
the
renovate
building.
it.
Okay, so we can't, so if we're looking at, if this board has decided to look at a K-8 structure, we can't do any plans on the renovation until we agree upon that K-8 versus K-5 structure. Unless you voted on prior to my joining, I'm not aware that we'd switch to
I think
K-8.
it's true that you won't be able to send it to a referendum to actually do the renovation until you know what you're going to do with the building. Yes.
So we're not looking
So,
at the status of the buildings right now, we're looking at the
design of
way-
K
the
through eight.
design,
You
the way
actually
it's
have
going.
data on the status of the buildings.
Okay,
It's
okay,
Their use
okay.
that we have to worry about.
Murphy, so we're not going to have a discussion about this bigger topic right now. I will put it on the agenda at a very soon, so that we can all get up to speed on where we are as a district and what decisions have been made and what decisions haven't been made around the use of the buildings, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just asking
Yeah.
what we've done, that's fine.
Yeah. I'm going to put it on my notes,
Okay,
so.
that's fine.
Anything else?
Before that goes on the agenda, can we have something sent out to the board, status of the buildings, ADA compliance, size of the buildings, things like this, sent out so we know what, just so when we're looking at these buildings, we know what we're talking about and.
I think at the retreat at each of our spots, there was an executive summary from the previous,
Yeah.
you came to the retreat. There was a
He-
book
he
first.
only
That's
came
pre
briefly.
me.
Right.
Retreat was pre
He
me.
wasn't at the retreat.
Ms. Testa, do you have an extra copy of those books from Fryer with the executive summary of the facilities master plan? I have a whole box set on my
We
counter
were-
at
we were
home,
all given a
but
set,
you don't need all
but-
7 of them. I have them building by
I
building.
think I have a
Um,
digital copy of those
We can
things,
get you one,
too.
Mr.
Right. And that went over ADA compliance, all that kind of stuff. What we need to know now is, what are we going to do programming wise? So we know which school to put first.
Right.
If we're going to double the size of Sweeney, then maybe we could put a K-8 school in there. Maybe it has a certain topic, like Barrows is STEM, maybe it's
Right.
music, maybe it's something else. But then we won't know how to rearrange them in order of importance for renovation and have swing space and stuff like that. That's what a facilities master plan looks like. So we request of Dr. Garcia to look at K-8 schools, whatever other configurations are there, because K-8 might be great in 1 or 2 of our schools, but there might not be enough room in 2 more of our schools. And we know that Windham Center and North Windham can't be expanded upon because of their footprint.
footprint,
You
right.
can't get ambulances around them if we expand upon them. There's leach fields and all those other kind of things. A lot of that work came out of the first facilities master plan, which is why Mr. Roach's quote to Dr. Garcia was significantly lower than the first facilities master plan that Dr. Adamowski paid for, because he has all this information already. He still has to tour the buildings, make sure nothing's changed that, isn't listed in those reports. But programmatically, we need to know what to do first, and that's what I said at the retreat, was that we need to know what we're doing programmatically with our schools, so we know what order and what importance to place on our renovations.
Right, that's kind of what I'm looking at, and I do have the Dr. Adamowski's report still. So just seeing what's changed in them few years, and that's it.
I think we'll spend some time getting everybody up to speed, so we're all on the same page, too, about that. Does that make sense?
Can I just have a point of clarification for Mrs. Lambert? So, so we're talking about two things. One is Mr. Roach does inform me today that he can meet with us on the 19th.
Okay.
So we have to wait till the 19th that he meet with us to go over the aspects. So
For the high school.
For the high school.
Okay.
So not till the 19th, a meeting with the team. And my team and I already started discussing the RFQ for the K through 8 configuration. But there are two things. One is the building configuration, and the other one is the programmatic configuration, meaning has the board made the decision to go to a K through 8? What are the benefits of a K through 8? What are the pro, what are the con? So it's one part of the conversation, and then the other part of the conversation is the building. So I want to make sure there are two things. And so the architect, whatever company, is going to look at the building per se, and then we need to look at the other part of it. What are the benefits of a K through 8 versus a K through 5, et cetera, et cetera.
To be continued.
We have a lot of work. High school
Yes.
renovation, high
A
school
lot
commission
of a lot
network,
to talk
this,
about.
and we have a lot of.
Yeah, a lot of work. So, policy committee, anything to
Hello.
report?
So we've been meeting diligently on 4 specific ones. 2 of them we've had to table several times, and we tabled it again. And so we're not entertaining any new policies right now until we resolve the 4 of them that we have. And so the 2 are ready for second reading today, and the other 2 we've tabled. We're going to meet next week. We have a holiday schedule for next week. We usually meet the end of the month, but because of Christmas break, we're meeting next Thursday.
Thursday, the 20th is your
The
next meeting?
20th, yes,
Okay.
at 5:30.
Any questions? Well, we look forward to hearing what you're doing next, but we're going to be talking about 2 of them in the next item, the action items.
Yes, yes, thank you. Happy holiday, everybody.
The executive committee, we haven't met since the last meeting. We're trying to figure out a schedule in the next week for a meeting, rather than meeting tomorrow night, because I have our annual board meeting at my office tomorrow night, which I have to be at. So stay tuned. We'll post it as soon as we have another date. Thanks. So for action items, we have for action tonight, the Board of Education Business and Workshop 2019 meeting dates and the Board of Ed Committee 2019 meeting dates. I know you all discussed this at the last meeting, so I guess I would entertain a motion on the first one, the Board of Education Business and Workshop 2019 meeting dates.
So moved.
Do I get a second?
Second.
Second. I think Mike beat you out, Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the calendar, this is what will go to the town. So it will be posted. It'll be official. All those in favor? Any opposed? Murph?
I was just wondering why we only had 1 meeting in June.
Graduations.
Graduations? Last year, we only had 1 meeting in June.
Yeah, well.
We can always have a special meeting. We can schedule a special meeting if
Yeah,
we
well,
need.
yeah, all right. So the flip
Yeah.
side of that is that you can always cancel a meeting that you
Right.
scheduled if you don't need it, but, all right, so that's okay, fine.
Um,
Just curious.
And then the next one is the Board of Education Committee 2019 meeting dates, and I'll entertain a motion, and then I have a amendment I'd like to make to that.
So moved.
Do I get a second?
I second it.
I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting last month, I was out of state, but the executive committee is on the first Thursday of the month rather than the first Wednesday, which is what it says here.
So we're gonna move to, I thought Wednesday would be,
Meets the first Wednesday of the month,
yeah.
but when I looked on the calendar, these dates are
All Thursdays.
Thursdays.
Oh,
Historically met on Thursdays, yes.
yeah, but we want to change it.
You want to change it to the first Wednesday of the month?
Wednesday, yeah. Yeah,
Well,
so
if
we'll
we're,
change it.
if we're changing it to the first Wednesday of the month, which is fine with me, we have to change all these dates
Dates,
then.
okay.
To correlate, so it would have to be January 2nd, February 5th, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd like to make a request that we meet at 6 PM rather than 5 PM.
Yeah, because it's hard for you to get back from
Very
Hartford.
hard for me to get here at 5.
Um,
So the first Wednesday of the month at 6 PM.
Actually, February 6th is a Wednesday, and January 3rd is a Wednesday.
Okay, so maybe I was looking at the wrong
January 3rd is
calendar.
a Thursday.
Those, you gotta look at the 2019 calendar.
Yeah, it's a Thursday.
Well, at any rate, we don't need to belabor the point. All I'm saying is make sure that the dates sync up and are the right ones. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
January.
not,
Yeah.
we're not going to quibble over the dates right now. We're just going to make sure, have Janet look at the dates and make sure they're right ones, right.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
And it's
All
at
right,
6
First
PM.
one's wrong.
So with that amendment, are there any other things that I guess I need, do I need a motion on the amending it?
I will amend my, yes. I just wanted to state something before I did that, too.
Yeah.
Until we're ready to move on the facilities master plan, I don't need 2 meetings a month. So
Okay.
that second meeting may get canceled the first couple months until we have something
Okay.
to actually get our
Okay.
teeth into. I don't see
Yeah.
a reason of having a meeting for us just to
Just
sit
to
there
sit
and
there.
look at each other. or
Right, and say the
reiterate
same
what we
thing
did the
over and
first
over,
meeting.
right, yeah.
Exactly, so.
Understood.
We may end up for the first few months until we get something from a consultant or something, canceling that second meeting a month. I just want to put it out there, but I'd like to leave them on the calendar in case we do need them.
Okay. So
I
any,
will amend my motion, yes. Ilda, will you amend
Will
your
you
second?
Yes, I'll amend my second.
so any further discussion on the motion as amended? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, okay. The next item is recommended approval of the revised 2018-19 school calendar for Windham Steps Academy. It's all in your packet. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Looks good.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
May I ask a
Yes.
question? Way back
Wait.
when we discussed the high school.
Before we vote, you want to?
Oh, I thought we just did vote.
Yeah, I think we're all set. I
Voted.
think it
We
was
voted?
unanimous.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
okay.
just want to make sure.
I didn't want you to go on to the next thing. Back when we approved the high school calendar, we took out the half-days for midterms, and Dr. Garcia said she was going to form a committee to discuss how to work around midterms for the high school. It's next month, and I don't know if a committee's been formed, who's on the committee, what they've decided, what they've looked into.
No.
And it's next month.
If I recall, they brought it to a grievance, and the board asked them to come back and work with us, and we
Right,
never heard
right.
from them. We never heard, they never came back to us. But however, we did look at it today, my assistant superintendent and I, because we knew it was coming up, and we do have some suggestion. So they never came back to us, Mrs. Lambert, but we going to give them some options that we look at today.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
So can you let us know in
Yeah.
January before
Yeah.
midterms hit?
Yeah. we
Okay.
can- Actually, we put it in my weekly to all the board members, so they
Okay,
can see.
I have
Fine.
a child who's got to
Right.
study for
Yeah.
6 AP midterms, and
Right.
not having that extra time is a concern, so, thank you.
Okay, now we're on to the second reading of the board policy on transportation. And we heard about this under public comment.
Yes. So,
Anything you want to explain to us?
so last month,
Before
talked
we
about it.
get into a discussion,
Yeah.
let's make sure that you've got a motion. and
I make a
second.
motion to approve the transportation policy.
Second.
Now we have discussion.
Okay,
so
go.
we can let them know that it's approved. So, so we spoke about last month how it was gonna work, and oddly enough, ironically, we met with a bus, M&J Company's CEO on Monday at Coffee Conversation, and he said there's already a policy in place for the kindergartners. They're usually kept back until someone is assigned to
Right.
pick them up. So it will still, the same,
Just be
the same
expanded.
will be implemented for the first and second graders.
It's in our packets.
Yep.
So is there any discussion? The motion's been made and seconded?
Well, okay, so,
Mark had his hand up.
oh, sorry.
Mark?
Just a procedural note, how are we going to notify the parents of this change?
Oh, we will notify them. Once it's approved, we will notify them through writing, through emails,
approved.
through newsletters, robocall. Each school will also notify
So,
them.
okay, as long as
Yeah.
the parents will be notified, that's all I'm
Yeah.
asking. Okay, thank you.
So it will be for next year, not for this year. Okay, I'm pretty sure Margaret will create a communication plan. We will have a communication plan.
So it won't go into effect till September?
Yeah.
Or August, the end of August?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not for this school year, it's for next year.
Okay.
Okay, Mike.
So, and on the other end of that, with, when the children are being brought back to school, I know Lebanon, for instance, your child can get brought back to school, whatever, 2 times, and after the second time, there's a charge. Is this district going to entertain something
We
like that?
don't have that, Mr. Lozano. We do not have a charge with that. What we do have is that each school does have conversation with the parents.
Okay.
And we do said, there are some option if you're a repeat offender, such we will notify the police. We have also, in some cases, notified DCF.
Right.
When the kids have been 10 times.
Chronically.
Chronically, yes. So, but we don't have a charge to the parents.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something, that want to be a policy, but we do notify DCF and we, in certain circumstances, have called the police.
Let's see how it works.
So,
Murphy.
so I met a kindergarten bus last year, and I didn't see any evidence that they held kindergarten kids back, or that they had any method of recognizing who was meeting the child. There is a distinction between the children that are dropped off in the villages in front of their front door and the children that are dropped off at bus stops in the city.
Right.
And that makes us different from the surrounding towns that virtually drop everybody off in front of a house. And I would support that in this district, that for the villages where you're making essentially house door-to-door deliveries, that there has to be someone home. In fact, I think there should be someone home no matter how old the children, well, I guess if they're in middle school or high school, they don't need to have somebody, out, standing out on the lawn. But the elementary school students ought to be met by somebody when it's their front door. But at bus stops in the city, you're now asking the bus drivers to do three times as many kids as the last time, and they're going to be trying to. And the other thing is, since I've also met buses in the cities, very few parents actually show up at the bus stop. Now, it isn't, but of course, this doesn't have to be a parent. It could be an older sibling.
Yeah.
I don't know how the bus drivers are going to keep track of who's authorized to meet a child and who isn't authorized to meet a child, or whether the child's in fact actually being met. Those buses can
Okay.
carry 60 kids.
Did you discuss this with the M&J bus?
Yeah, he assured us that there's supposed to be someone and the bus driver is supposed to have a list. Whether that's being implemented or not.
I do
we-
want
It
to
happens
say,
for preschool. It does
It
not
does
happen for
preschool.
kindergarten.
I've seen
And-
parents
and
get on
Kate,
the
There
bus
is nothing
and
on
sign
the
to get
buses
off.
with kids for preschool except preschool kids.
and Kate,
I will tell you that, I don't know about every bus driver, but, my wife was a bus driver last year and the previous years in Willimantic, not Windham. And she knew all the kids, where they were, who their parents were, who everybody was, and several times had to wait for a parent to bring them back because she was obviously late getting back to my house. So she'd call me and say, I gotta bring little Johnny to, whatever. So they do know, and there is a list, there is a policy. Once these drivers have these kids for a week, they know who they are, they know who the parents are. So I don't think that's an issue there. But what you're saying about Willimantic is just the reason that I would say we're working on this policy is to get parents or somebody out there so that this little kindergartner or this first, second grader is not walking from, a corner in Willimantic by himself to his house.
They're not walking by themselves. That's the point. They're walking
They might be
in
working
bunches.
right, but you kind of want to get somebody out there. And that's to get some kind of involvement with the kids,
I'd urge you to go stand at a bus stop and watch it happen.
Well, okay.
It should
Well-
happen.
Well, I, being the chairperson of this policy committee, am willing to go to a couple of the bus stops once we implement this to see if it is happening. And if it's not, then we'll take it back to,
I think, given this discussion tonight, if we pass this, which we haven't taken a vote on it yet.
Yes, we have.
No, we haven't. We have
haven't
a
voted on it yet. We
motion
have a
and a
motion
second.
and
We're
a
having
second.
discussion.
Bring it to discussion.
A motion to approve and discuss. A motion and second, and
No, we
now we're
approved it.
discussing it. So if we approve it, I would urge the committee to work more with the bus company to figure out what the protocols and procedures really are. I really appreciate your input from your wife, who has been a bus driver. I have a bus stop in my yard and have had one for years where 8 or 9 or 10 kids get off, and I've seen how it's worked over the years. But there are a lot of kids who are unaccompanied, but there are a lot of kids who are with older siblings too. So, and some kids only have to walk 2 houses down the road, and there might be somebody looking out the window or sitting on the front porch for all I know. But
One more thing, Lynn. I
Yes.
just urge you, we talked about doing an RFP, Dr. Garcia and her staff talked about doing an RFP for bus companies come this spring. I urge you to make sure that this policy or notation of it somewhere is part of the paperwork. So that way, whoever bids on this is aware of exactly, so we don't hire maybe a different bus company, maybe the same one, and have them say, we didn't know we had to do that. It's gonna add more cost, or it's gonna add something to
Right.
the cost of the contract. So, thank you. Sorry.
is there any further discussion on this? So I think we have some concerns still. A lot of people want to do it, but they want to make sure it's going to work.
If I may say something, the bus company had brought back kindergarten to us, that nobody was there, our older brother or older sister. So I just want to say that it's taking place. On the same token, we have a second grader. And by the way, you're right, Mr. DeSonner. Unless maybe the substitute for the first time that don't know the kid, the bus driver knows who is a cousin or a brother. Usually they know. But we had an incident where there's a substitute for the first time and a second grader wandered around. And there was a substitute bus driver that was the first time, and a second grader wandered around and went. And so we're informed by somebody else. But usually if there's, even with the kindergarten, if they're not an older sibling, or anywhere, the bus driver would bring them back to the schools. So they know.
Can we vote? All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? An abstention.
This is to accept the policy.
Yes. Motion carries.
thank you.
Second reading of the board policy on the handbook. And entertain a motion to approve this. I'll entertain a motion and a second, and then we. Second by Mike. So now we can go into discussion. Would you like to explain it to us or anything?
So last month, again, there was some discrepancy. There was some extra wording on there, so we took that off. And then the only addition is the superintendent or the designee. So the designee is pretty much the only thing we added on there. Shall approve the publications.
Any discussion?
Just designee.
Okay, no discussion. All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor?
I'm sorry.
Anybody who's opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Now we have now we have to approve the agreement for the child nutrition programs. There was a very long application that was included in our packets.
This is an
It's a
annual
pretty
thing, is it
standard
not?
annual thing.
Annual thing.
Yes,
Annual
yep.
thing.
So
I
moved.
think I've seen this before.
So there's a motion made. Did I
Second.
hear a second? Second.
Second it.
Any discussion?
Is it the same amount as last year?
Too much.
Do you know?
Let me check, let me see right now.
I should have asked you that earlier. I'm sorry.
It's the same amount, Mrs. Lambert.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Lynn?
Yes?
Does this include a board luncheon?
Thank you for having humor at this time of the evening. So any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion that's on the floor? It carries. Then recommended approval of submission of the bilingual Title III grant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? This is another standard thing. Okay,
Never turned down
all
money.
those in favor? Okay, motion carries. And finally, item G on the budget transfers, which were handed out to us during the course of this meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget. So moved. Transfers. Do I get a second?
Second.
Any explanation or discussion needed? Murphy?
Well, the only thing that came up in the finance meeting was item 17 on here that transfers money from one, this is actually a within the ECO program transfer, but the transportation there refers to money for field trips and other things. And usually when we look at transportation, you think about the regular school buses. And field trip transportation may involve buses, but it's not quite the same thing as, so what I asked them to do was come up with a better descriptive title for that category. But that's just a bookkeeping thing, so you can tell what it is.
Yes, Mary?
Is it really district-wide PE that is number 18? I kind of like the idea, if it's,
District-wide PE. Dr. Garcia, you gonna start doing push-ups?
and health PD.
YPE and Health PD.
Physical education.
Physical education.
It is,
Physical education and Health PD, right.
okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in,
I'm sorry, what does that exactly mean? District-wide?
Meaning all the K through 12 PE teachers.
Oh, it's teachers. Okay.
all those in favor of the motion on the floor? Okay, it's unanimous. So now we're on to public comment, if there's any public comment. I think we've tired the public.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is Ms. Stouffer here, Attorney Stouffer here to discuss the non-meeting?
Or
Or is
the
she here for
personnel
the
matters?
personnel, for the
No,
executive
she's
session?
here to discuss the negotiations.
So the non-meeting.
Right.
Should we move that ahead of
Yes, why
executive
don't we do
session?
Yeah,
Because
let's
she's
do that.
being paid to sit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she wants to get home to her kids. Well, there's.
So I'll entertain a motion.
So I move to put the non-meeting before the executive session.
Okay.
Second.
All those, any discussion?
I'm not familiar with this non-meeting term. What is a non-meeting?
Would our attorney like to explain to us what a non-meeting is?
Sure, so since we're discussing strategy related to collective bargaining, it's actually officially defined as a non-meeting under FOIA. So we're not going into executive session because we're not discussing records and reports of strategy per se. We are legally convened a non-meeting, which means you can excuse the public, but it's distinguishable from executive session.
And we're not taking minutes?
There's no need for minutes. So, in other words, we're not triggering any FOI obligations.
Okay. we're voting to move the non-meeting ahead. Did we do that already?
We didn't vote.
No,
just
no, we
had the
didn't. We had the motion.
Yep.
So, all those in favor of moving the agenda item up? Okay, unanimous. So we're going to go into a non-meeting to discuss collective bargaining strategy and negotiations with the Windham Federation of Teachers, and everybody but the board members and our attorney and the superintendent are excused. See you tomorrow, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.